Alright, so for our long division, very first thing we're going to do is take 5 divided by 4. What do you get? 1. After I put the 1 on top of the house, what do I do next? Okay, subtract 4 from 5. Well, how do I do that? I don't have a 4 underneath here. So, why do I just put it there? What? Okay, so step 2. Okay, Jade, you do know you were on candid camera here. All right. So, here's the thing, guys. Remember, I told you I was going to make you slow down and explain every step to me, because you're going to need every step when you get to the Algebra 2 long division. So, the next step is to multiply the number that's on top of the house by the number in front of the house. So 1 times 4 is 4. What next? Subtract. Now, here's where I'm going to be picky about the subtraction. There's not anything that's written here that tells me to subtract, and that's a positive 4. So we're just changing it from a positive 4 to a negative 4, basically, right? Okay, so to go along with where we're headed, when you do the step that says subtract, I need you to think in your mind about change the sign. Okay. I changed the sign so I can subtract. 5 minus 4 is 1. What's next?
Bring down the 7.
Bring down the 7. I could bring the 6 down too, or I can just do the 7. So next step is bring down. Okay, what's next? Okay, so I'm going to start my process all over again. I'm going to divide. 17 divided by 4. How many times will it go? 4. After I'm done with the dividing part, step 2 is multiply the new number on top times the number in front. So 4 times 4 is 16. In order to subtract, I have to change that sign. So that gives me 17 minus 16 is 1. Bring down the 6 that's left over. Start again. Divide. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 4 times 4 gives me 16. That's the multiplication part. And now in order to subtract, I have to change the sign. I get 0. Nothing left to bring down. You are done. So, what the question is asking this time is blank and blank are factors of 576. What goes in my blanks? 4 and 144. And the reason those two are factors is because the remainder is equal to 0. So when your remainder is equal to 0, the number in front of the house and the number on top of the house are factors of the number that's inside the house. So what I really need you to see with this example is first to review the steps, but then to start thinking about a remainder of 0 and being factors of something, because that's going to translate over to what we're doing in a few minutes. Right? Next one. 1,279 divided by 3. Which one goes inside the house? 1,279. 3 goes in front. So, can I do 1 divided by 3? No. So I got to take two numbers underneath. 12 divided by 3 is 4. That was step 1. Now multiply. I get 12. Change the sign so I can subtract. Gives me 0. Bring down the 7. And now I'm going to divide again. 7 divided by 3 is 2. After we divide, we're going to multiply the new number on top times the number in front. Will give me 6. Change the sign so we can subtract. I get 1. Bring down the 9 and start the process all over again. 19 divided by 3 is 6. Multiply. 6 times 3 is 18. Change the sign so I can subtract. I get 1. There's nothing left to bring down. So, do you remember the good old days before you learned about decimals?
Fraction.
And you would put a little R1, remainder 1. That's all we're doing here. So, the question that we really want to answer here, though, is 3 a factor of 1,279? No. How do you know?
Because the remainder does not equal zero.
Because the remainder does not equal 0. Okay. So now, I didn't write the steps down for this second problem, but I used the exact same steps we had listed up here above. And what we're going to do now is look at some Algebra 2 long division, and it's going to use the exact same steps. But I am going to write them down this time so we've got it to look at. Okay, anybody still working on this one? All right. So here is my Algebra 2 long division. I'm going to put my steps over here. Divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. So when I subtract, remember we've got to think in our mind, change sign. Alright, so for this problem, which parenthesis goes inside the house? The first one. 6x squared plus 7x plus 2, and I put the 2x plus 1 out in front. Alright, so step 1. We're going to take this first term in here and divide it by just the first term out front. And I'm going to put it out here to the side so you can see what I'm doing. I want to do 6x squared divided by 2x. What does that give you?
3x.
3x. So that's what goes on top of the house. Okay, that was step 1. That was divide. Step 2 is to multiply. I have to take what's on top of the house times everything in front of the house. So 3x times 2x is 6x squared. Then I have to do 3x times 1, and I get 3x. Now it's time to subtract. In order to subtract, I have to change both of those signs. When I do that, my 6x squareds cancel, and I now have 7x minus 3x is 4x. Now it's time for the last step, which is bring down the positive 2. And now we're back at the top again. I want to divide the first number down here divided by the 2x. So I'm actually doing 4x divided by 2x gives me 2. And that is a positive 2, so on top of the house I put plus 2. And now the new term on top multiplies by everything out in front. So 2 times 2x is 4x. 2 times 1 is a positive 2. Change the signs so you can subtract. Your 4x cancel. The 2's also cancel, giving me a remainder of 0. So what are the factors of 6x squared plus 7x plus 2?
2x plus 1 and 3x.
Okay, the number in front of the house and what's on top of the house. Alright, so now let's take a look at problem number 1. Let's see if you can set it up as a long division problem, and then we'll work our way through it. Are y'all ready to try this one, or do you want to do it together? Okay, so I'm going to let you work for just a minute or so, and then I'll have you stop, and we'll go back through it together and see how you did. Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you that this one, I believe it has a remainder. Yeah, it does. It has a remainder. Okay. So once you've got your problem worked here, following these steps, remainder of negative 31, let's read the questions and answer what they actually wanted to know. Is x plus 5 a factor? No. How do you know?
That's because it has a remainder that doesn't equal 0.
Yeah, because my remainder does not equal 0. Alright, I've got 2 more. One we're going to do together, and then the other one I'm going to let you try on your own again. And when I printed these, evidently my page break was not set up quite right. Yeah, so if you printed these as well, that's at the bottom of the page. I'm going to work it out at the top of this one here. Alright, so now let's go ahead and set up our long division. Now, I want you to look at something. Look at where I stopped right here. I've got my 3x to the 4th minus 4x to the 3rd plus 12x squared. Do I have an x to the first term? No. So you need to put in a placeholder. So I'm going to put in a 0x, because 0 times anything is just like it's not even there. And there's my plus 5. I need this to be in standard form, and it has to include every single term. Out in front is an x squared plus 1. I don't need a placeholder out front. I need a placeholder inside the house. So now, my steps don't change. Now let's start with step 1, which is divide. And remember, we're going to take this first term, and this time we're dividing by x squared. So 3x to the 4th divided by x squared gives me what? 3x squared. So that goes on top of the house. Now, I'm going to take that and multiply it by everything out in front. So that's going to give me 3x to the 4th plus 3x squared. Now, hang on, let's look here just a second. Can I put my 3x squared under my cube term? No. So let's back up. Where do I need to put it? Under the 12x squared.
We're supposed to put like a 0x to the third there.
You can, you don't have to. I generally just leave it blank. But now, in order to subtract, I have to change the sign here and change the sign here.
What happens to the negative 4x cubed? Did you just say it? Or do you bring it
We're going to bring it down in the next step. Okay. Go ahead, these cancel. I'm going to bring down my negative 4x cubed, and then 12x squared minus 3x squared gives me a positive 9x squared. And most of the time, if I have to put in a placeholder or something like that, when I start bringing stuff down, I'm just going to go ahead and bring it all down. It just makes it easier for me to keep up with. So now, let's start our dividing process all over again. I'm going to take the first term here and divide it by the first term out front. So it's negative 4x cubed divided by x squared gives me a negative 4x. So on the top of the house, I put negative 4x. And then I'm going to multiply negative 4x times everything out in front. So I get negative 4x cubed minus 4x. Make sure you line up your like terms. Alright, now change your signs. My 4x cubes cancel. I bring down my 9x squared. I get a positive 4x and a plus 5. We got to divide again. So this time, I'm going to take my 9x squared, divide it by the x squared. That's going to give me a positive 9. So plus 9 goes on top. Multiply 9 times everything out in front. Change your signs. Your 9x squareds cancel. I bring down 4x and I get minus 4. Can I do, to start at the top again, can I do 4x divided by x squared? No. So we're done. This time your remainder is 4x minus 4. So let's go back to the original problem. I wanted to know, is x squared plus 1 a factor of this? Is it a factor? No. How do you know? Because the remainder doesn't equal 0. Alright, one more of these. I'm going to help you get it set up, and then I'm going to let you work for a few minutes. what goes in front of the house? X minus 2. And inside, I've got x to the 5th minus 32. Make sure you put in all of your placeholders. So I've got a 0x to the 4th, a 0x cubed, a 0x squared, a 0x, and then minus 32. Okay. And before we get too far, let me go back up to that problem above that we just finished, and I'll show you why the placeholder is important. Okay. If we go up here, there's my placeholder. When I brought it down, if I didn't have that placeholder, would I have anything to combine with my 4x? No, that's why I needed it. So, all right, here you go. Okay.
If you multiply it times x 3/4.
Yeah, so up here the discussion was, if you take x minus 2 times what's on top of the house, it's going to give me what's under the house, which is just x to the 5th minus 32. But here's the next step to this. If you tell me that x minus 2 is a factor because the remainder is 0, okay, x minus 2 is a factor, what is a solution going to be?
2.
Because remember, if it's a factor, you set it equal to 0, and then you can solve and x equals 2. This is a solution. It's a root. It's a 0. That's where it touches the x-axis. Okay, so everything we just finished doing ties in with this. It's another way of working with it.